Before we start the talk, there is an announcement about group meetings. For people who haven't read it yet on the bulletin board, we are into the 6th round of meetings, and if people would prefer to have a group meeting instead of an individual meeting, then please sign up in the slots on the sheet. We will have group meetings this evening too, if people wish to do that. This is day 6 of the December 90 7-day retreat at Springwater. Three questions have not been looked into here from our long list on the first or second day. I will read them again, and maybe we can get to all of the three today. Inquiring into things and oneself needs as its basis an openness and gentleness. And how can that go on in one's daily job life, which is so full of harshness, hardness, left brain involvement, closeness to that which is in touch with life? Is it possible to bring the two together? Can sorrow come to an end? The sorrow of not knowing what to do about it, the sorrow of not being aware most of the time, the sorrow of war, of killing, of living enclosed in a self-centeredness and not even very much aware of it all. And I feel fear when I think of my mother and father dying, my companion dying, myself dying, not living anymore with the people and things I love. If all the sessions I have sat, the ceremonies, the chanting, prostrations, the sittings I've sat don't help me to really face this, or deal with this fear of dying, then what use is it all? Of what use is it all? Holding another question here which came up yesterday in a group meeting. I'll read that too, and maybe we'll quickly look at that before the others. It was something like that. You talk about the past not operating in the present, being free of the past, but what about the future? What about thinking about the future? What about a commitment to a relationship with a husband or wife or companion? A long-term commitment. Is there any validity in that? About long-term commitment, we can make all kinds of commitments. Allow our idealism to roam. What we're going to do in the future, how we're going to behave in the future, what we are going to be for each other in the future. But how are we living now? This moment, from moment to moment. What is important? Our commitment, ideal as it may be, romantic, for the future together. What is important? Isn't it important how we live this moment together? Is there openness for each other? Caring, not just out of self-centered need, but aware of the other person, their state of being, their needs, their pain. Can, in being together now, be meeting freshly each other, not based on carried images from yesterday, not based on what we should be for each other, what the other should be like for me, what he or she should see in me or want in me. Can all of that be looked at now so that the relationship is alive with openness and learning, finding out about each other and oneself, and the moment-to-moment situations and challenges in which we live, with a loving care? So how do we live in our daily life of job, money making to support the living quarters, the house or apartment, the family, children, companion? Person wondered whether the openness and tenderness, gentleness of looking into oneself without judgment, without harshness, being in touch with what is going on in this human being, whether that can survive, as he put it, under the sledgehammers of the job situation. I wonder if I would stay in a job in which I was sledgehammered day in and day out. I might spend a while to find out what this sledgehammering is. Is it something that I perceive? Is there something I'm contributing to this, bringing it about? Myself, by my ways of being, of challenging people, or anger in myself, or whatever. But if a situation is truly unbearable, why stick with it? For the sake of an ideal of being one with everything, because it's good for one? Is it possible to find a way to earn a living in which openness and gentleness and looking and learning can go on? It's an important question, and that cannot be answered theoretically, but one can look. People have created jobs for themselves, maybe in a service in which there is not the need for roughness and competitiveness, comparison with others, striving for prestige, trying to climb a ladder of success. Because one understands what this does to oneself and each other, how it creates callousness and indifference in oneself and the people around one. I know of one person who recently looked for a job and changed it several times. At times when there was maybe good earning possibility, good insurance, but not staying there because of realizing how one would get callous just competing all the time with the people in the office, because that's what all that was going on. Trying to vie for position, for more money, for getting more money out of the customers. And saying no to that, even though there were good returns in it financially. Realizing, too, there is no ideal place to work. We're always running into ourselves and running into each other. And that can be looked at and learned from, so that the mind frees itself by seeing the truth of how we live in comparison, in enemy creation, in image formation, and not seeing each other but images of other people and fighting those, or getting upset over those. We need to learn that, and we can't learn that if we move into a hermitage. Although even in a hermitage, I understand from some people who have lived in one for a while, there are lots of ghosts around. Ghosts of memory, of the future, how it should be, how one should excel or advance or develop, and frustration with that. But we live as human beings in relationship, and not just with each other, but with things and with nature. And can we live in a new way in which image and concept, to which we're so used that we don't even realize anymore, that we don't see a tree or a river without the idea, the philosophy, the poetry of it, associations that come to mind. Can we learn that freshly? To live directly with each other and with the river, the woods, and the clouds, and the city streets, if need be. You're really asking if one can live for more than just glimpses, little firefly glimpses at a time, out of the emptiness of looking and learning about ourselves and each other and this amazing universe around us, of stars and snowflakes, trees that have buds already in this cold weather, and sun breaking through the clouds, illumining everything. Can one live and listen out of emptiness, of no attachment to this constant identity of me, seeing how it operates, how it blocks and bars, shuts out the wholeness of life, to to learn about it, not to just gather information about it. That's what we usually do. Get more information about ourselves and each other psychologically. But that information does not liberate. What liberates is seeing the truth of this moment of anger or attachment to my image that was just hurt by someone else, not respected the way I would like it respected. Seeing the truth of that has an energizing and liberating effect. It is really seen and not immediately gone into thought again. I shouldn't have images. I'm justified in being angry or hurt. That's human nature. Then there's no liberation. It's only more information about me and you. This all ties in with the question whether suffering can end, doesn't it? And we're not asking immediately whether wars can end. It doesn't seem they can, the way things are going. There seem to be more and more wars fought with more and more remote weapons, which doesn't bring one directly in touch with what the weapons inflict. It happens at a remote distance where the bombs crash or the gas may strike. We have now air-conditioned tanks. And uniforms may be air-conditioned too. You'd wish that people wouldn't have to suffer from this incredible heat and that they have air conditioning. What does the factories are producing now? Air-conditioned equipment for the war or the siege in the desert. So soldiers can be comfortable killing others. Or maybe not just to make them comfortable, but to avoid getting flack from them. This question has occupied, I think, a couple of group meetings, whether or not we are somehow contributing to this stream of war making. And if one looks at oneself, one has no intention to contribute to the war. Not to that war, at least. Or this war. Maybe there could be a war to which I would feel a contribution is necessary, because that is a just war. Can suffering end in a human being? In human beings? I'm not saying in a human being, meaning it can only happen in one or two. For that we have to look at what suffering is, don't we? To take it under the magnifying glass. Look at it spaciously, carefully. What do we mean by suffering? There is physical pain, which all of us have at one time or another. Very few people escape physical pain. One may have it chronically, or more and more of it with an advancing disease. How to be with pain? Are there different ways of feeling pain? Again, is there the intimacy of contact with it? Intimacy meaning nothing coming in between. Just that whatever it is, one may have had it diagnosed at the physician, with a physician. Now that the diagnosis is clear, maybe it's not clear. Can the mind stop roaming around about the disease, about the pain? Or rather, can one realize a vast difference between intimacy with pain, direct touch with it, directly feeling it, and the added suffering of thinking about the pain? Establishing or creating oneself in thought and storyline and image as the sufferer, the victim of this pain. If one once grasps the immediate complications, then one may not go into this constantly thinking about the pain and seeing oneself as the victim of the pain. Or one may discover to one's surprise that there's attachment to this victimization. In some way or other, psychologically, gratification or satisfaction is gleaned from having this role. And this doesn't just go for physical pain. Goes for psychological pain. The continuation of it through attachment to the role of a sufferer. Not to reject this out of hand or say, this is not true for me or this is not true at all, but to listen to it and wonder about it. And watch it as there is pain. What does thought do about it? To learn and to see the truth of what is happening. Actually, when there is pain, the more intense it is, the more possible it is that there's nothing comes in between. There's no energy left for roaming around in thought about it. And with that, the process changes. Because the extra is not there of me as the victim, the martyr, the sufferer, the endurer, which thought constantly wants to create and recreate. By thinking about it. There's no I that's doing it. It is thought that is active. And thought, as we have said innumerable times, is not just in the head. It's linked with every cell of the body, with every gland, with every organ, every muscle. Through chemical, neurological, electrical processes, which are so fast that often the thought or the image or remembrance that triggered it has not come into awareness. Pain, physical pain, cannot end. Aging does not end. Getting into accidents gets worse. The more cars we have, the more dangerous instruments we're using, or the more we drug ourselves with alcohol and things, the less alert we are, the more accidents happen. See, one can't separate most of the time the psychological from the physical, can one? But when there's physical pain, there, because there are painkillers, and there may be methods of psychologically or chemically even maybe causing the brain through certain thoughts to release pain relievers or painkillers. All kinds of research going on in that. And yet, there are always some moments between where the painkiller leaves off and the next one is taken and takes effect. And some painkillers don't kill all the pain. It's there. We're sensitive organisms. We're alive, sensitive organisms. And with that goes the experience of pleasure as well as pain. So how can it be felt and lived with so it is just what it is and nothing more? As for psychological suffering, why do we suffer psychologically? Off and on during the last 5 talks or 6 talks, we've mentioned a lot, and in meetings and group meetings. Not wanting to be what we are and wanting to be what we are not. Which all of it utilizes the process of thinking and image making. Getting hurt, not being treated the way we would like to be treated or think we deserve being treated. And then either lashing out aggressively and causing further suffering because the one who has been lashed out against will pay back in some way or other most of the time. Or at least there is a relationship of animosity developing, and we suffer from that. The idea that we don't have loving relationships, that no one likes us. Or we withdraw, we're not going to get hurt again, says thought. I mistrust all people, I will not open myself up to any further hurt or expose myself. Because if one opens oneself up, there may not be hurt. Words are very dualistic. In the openness, there is no hurt. But fearing hurt from memory through image, anticipating it to happen again, and withdrawing from people because they're hurtful. I don't trust them to treat me gently, appropriately. Withdrawing from people into isolation and then suffering from the isolation. No one loves me. No one will come to me. Do you see the involvement of thought and storyline and all of that, of imagery about me and others? And the powerful impact that has on our organism, resulting in what we call intense suffering, suffering loneliness, suffering hurt, suffering aggression from others, animosity, harshness, and suffering from the absence of love and all of that. Can that suffering end? We want to keep it simple today. Sometimes people tell me you're slurring over things, something that should be said. But we can talk about that in meetings. I do slur. I can't say the whole thing. It's impossible. And saying one thing, you leave something else out. But this thing is an ongoing process. And we can communicate with each other. That's a marvelous thing, and that there's great energy and joy. People getting together to talk with each other about common concerns that may have been slurred over in a talk. So, keeping it simple, getting hurt, withdrawing or aggressing, animosity growing, feeling of isolation, not lovedness and no love. Can that suffering end? In you and me? Who are basically, fundamentally not different from George Bush or Saddam Hussein. Are we interested in this, whether suffering can end, the suffering of hurt, suffering of isolation, of ideas about people, and not seeing that these ideas of people may not be the people today. Someone may have dropped something, wants to start communicating again, but I say, I don't trust you, you hurt me. 2 times in the past, or 5 times. And with that, suffering continues, doesn't it? And also, my attachment to my victimization, my role as a victim of all of that. Let's look at it. We don't need to expose it to anybody else, but see for ourselves the truth, if it's going on. And that frees. Not just thinking about it. Reading about victimization and Victor in psychology books may have its usefulness on a certain level, but it's information about something that's actually happening in me and you, and can be directly watched, directly traced or observed, felt as it's happening. Is this too abstract? It becomes very concrete when it's happening, and looking, and learning. And not carrying over till tomorrow. Because the amazing thing is, to the extent that something is really lived through with alertness, with openness, and maybe the pain of the first hurt, the agitation of the heart pumping, maybe throat closing up, all these symptoms that are there when we're afraid of someone else. He may hurt me, she may hurt me again, or get angry at me. To go through the whole thing from beginning to end. Then we don't have to carry it. We've gone through the whole thing. It's become so clear in watching it. And the memory does not record much of what is gone through completely. It's this incomplete, unfinished business that is stored forever. For future reference, I will remember that and pay back, or guard myself from this hurtful person. The beauty of it, the lightness of going through something without becoming a sufferer, without becoming even an experiencer of all of that, because that separates me out in thought as someone who has to endure this. Poor me, or bad me, or good me. All of this isolating activity of image making, gone over and over and over to firm up these positions in identity, what I am, and my attitudes toward the idea of what I am. All traceable in thought when it becomes transparent in an open inquiry, in an open wondering, without safeguards, not trying to protect anything or worry about losing anything. Is that possible? Can the ignorance of what is going on in myself and you and our relationship, can that end in looking, listening, discovering, seeing directly? Then there is no more the sorrow of ignorance. Then there's the lightness of understanding, seeing what is going on, the truth of it. Which is freeing. In such an inquiry as we're all engaged in right now, do investments reveal themselves, what I don't want to look at, what I don't want to touch? Because this is me. The fear of losing my long-standing meaning of my life through identity. Identity with causes, with role, with position, as man or woman, black or white. All our religious affinity, affiliation, Jew or Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu. Are we willing to question it all and not say, this will not be questioned? This I need. Without that I can't continue living. Well, then we won't question it, and we can continue living in fear and sorrow. Because where there is attachment, there is fear of that attachment being questioned or losing what I'm attached to. The person, the creed, the dogma, the idea, the possessions. The amazing thing is that there are so many blind spots we have of attachment that we don't even see. All of a sudden, maybe we come upon it. And either we look away, I won't touch this, or there's a release of letting go of it by seeing it. Seeing what has bugged the mind and body for so long. Being attached to this idea of being whatever. needing constant nourishment of that, support, and therefore affiliating with people who support my identity. And with that, so quickly, the antagonism to other people who have different identities. And all of that is not very far removed from war. What am I when I don't attach to identity? When that's seen through as being unimportant and trapping. Does that question arouse scared feelings? Fear? Is that similar to the fear of dying? Of not continuing as what I know myself to be and what I would like to know myself continuing to be? We're coming to this last question about the fear of dying. Again, there are two kinds of dying, aren't there? There's the physical death, which is the one assurance we all have, is that we'll die sooner or later. In a peaceful, painless way, as a few fortunate people are able to die peacefully, painlessly. On a violent way, war-like, bombs dropping or terrorist attack. On an accident, so quickly, a slippery road and 3 cars colliding. Mother of 3 children dead instantly. 3 little children, not grown, in need of her. And the father, the husband, at the wheel saying, my wife doesn't talk to me, she doesn't talk to me. Dead. All of us, fragile organisms that we are, will die. Either an accident, old age, or a sickness. Early, as a child, as a young woman, or an old person. Are we afraid of dying? Afraid of losing those who are dear to us, who we love to be with, enjoy their company, have grown attached to? In thought, there's the fear of dying, isn't there? Or is there? We mustn't assume that this is inevitably so, there's fear of dying, because it just has gone on for so long. But die we will, whether we're afraid of it or not, no matter how we protect ourselves against this thought through all kinds of imagined future lives or paradises, happy hunting grounds. There's an infinite array of imagined future states which escape from facing the death, the ending of this body. Some of the most magnificent monuments human beings have put together were put together to keep the dead alive or seemingly alive by mummifying them, entombing them maybe with all their retinue, and frescoes, paintings all over of the happy life on this earth continued after death. Sometimes people say, if I had the faith that I would continue, I wouldn't have to be afraid of dying. And I envy those people who have that belief, because they seem to be so steady. I remember myself coming upon this in joining a Buddhist center, now the rebirth thing, and really grabbing onto that. I'll be reborn. And of course, in one's imagination, one will be reborn not in the Sudan, without food and water. And all of that, and we've talked for 6 days about the power of thought and image, can arouse real positive, what we call positive energies in the body, looking forward to it, or at least not under the impact of the pain of fearing the death and ending. But I don't want to take a drug anymore. Is there something in human beings that really wants to see the truth? Be in touch with what is really happening in the fear of dying? How it operates and whether it can end without believing in anything, not taking over somebody else's theories or traditional sayings. There may be such a thing, because there are human beings who are not satisfied with any comfort or consolation or belief in imagined afterlives. Of course, in coming to the other kind of dying, which is dying to the psychological structures that we have created, thinking that's me and my life, dying to that. Is that possible? I'm not talking about a willful act, because wanting to die to that is a continuation of me wanting to have a better existence now as a dead me. We need to find out what this me is, that we hope will reincarnate, and we don't even know what it is. What is there to reincarnate? I want to find out before I believe in reincarnation. Because looking as we have during this retreat at this constant stream of conditioned thought, conditioned behavior, that constantly reincarnates in newborn human beings, newborn babies. Very similar thoughts from thoughts that have been around for all ages reincarnate in new babies. Thoughts, habits, fears, desires, ambitions, seekings, and so forth. Is that what I'm hoping for? For this thought that is such a burden now, that causes such suffering, to reincarnate again? Why don't I deal with it now? What do I expect the future life to do for me? makes up this strong feeling of me as an entity? We've been asking it and looking maybe finding out about it, without thinking about myself. And I don't mean repressing those thoughts, but those thoughts not operating. The thoughts about myself, the way I am, what I stand for, what I have to fight for or fight against, what I have to be for all the rest of my life, without those thoughts operating. Is there fear? When this being something is not constantly reinforced by thinking about it, is there fear about not being? That can be another thought, can't it? I won't be. And oh my God. Somebody told me this morning in sitting down and saying, oh my God, she realized there was no my and no God. It's just a habitual saying. In a state like that, there's no fear of ending because something has ended at that moment. We don't say what's going to happen next moment. We have to see. Sometimes when I talk like this, come to something like that, some people will later tell me, why do you paint pies in the sky of a state of being that has nothing to do with me? I'm in pain, I'm in hurt, I'm in worry. Then what is that pain? What is that hurt and worry? Can one see it, be with it? Maybe not understand it, maybe not able to see it, but what makes one report about it in the first place? Must be some awareness of it. And what is the quality of this awareness? Full of thought about how I should be or shouldn't be. Look at it, we've been going through it. And we can do it over and over again freshly, every time, no matter how many times in the past. Look at ourselves, whatever is happening right now, without a vantage point. Not trying to salvage something or invest something or protect something or justify something or continue something. As if there's complete looking right now, witness, use whatever word you want, then there's no continuity. A thought may start up this moment, but it doesn't have to continue. If it continues, why make a problem of it? Because I don't want it? Is there an I that can want thoughts and not want thoughts? Yeah, there is. That I is thought. But that thought of I is not separate from the whole stream of thoughts. It's all thoughts. And not just in the head, but all over the body. Actively arousing fear or pleasure. Grasping or rejecting. Do we want that to continue? Are we afraid of that not continuing? Can we look and listen in stillness, spaciously, no borders set by beliefs or superstition. When life or aliveness, the wholeness of aliveness is not cut up, segmented through thought into me and you. When it is moving, flowing in wholeness, then there is also love and intelligence operating, which are not personal properties. They cannot be owned or acquired. They operate in the moment. Of being and being together as nobody special. No one that needs to continue in opinions or positions or grudges or pleasures. That shuts out love and intelligence. Then the space is the tightness of a capsule again. And that can be seen. Space drawing close and tight. But when that's seen, what happens? I don't know. Do I want something to happen? Am I afraid something will not happen? These are thoughts, and they're of the capsule. Nothing more comes to mind but sunshine is bright and warming. We'll end here for today.